Hi there, my name is Michael Moxley, and in today's video we will be going over a kind of a tutorial in wide-angle astrophotography. So I was graciously invited by Martin Pursell to Pursell Farms to do a little collab video where we would go out and do a wide-angle astrophotography of one of the more iconic shots at Pursell Farms. And in this video, I'll be showing you how I edited and how I took the picture. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel because I have some very cool projects coming up in the near future, and let's get on to the video. Now, it's supposed to be about an 80% moon, but it's not supposed to rise till about, let's say 10 o'clock. So I think we have from about sunset to the 10 o'clock, about 2 hours to shoot. And this is the location that we've chosen, the iconic hole 5.
Yes.
What I'm doing to line up my shot with because we're trying to do a wide angle Milky Way, probably shooting at about 17 millimeters. I'm using a app called Sky Guide, and I'm lining it up. And for tonight at about 8:30, the Milky Way will be pointing directly behind the green, which will be perfect. So I'll be able to do a single shot exposure and do multiple stacked exposures along with a blended foreground, which I think will be perfect. So we're out here at hole 17 and 18.
Correct.
Just trying to scout out some more locations, which I think this view right here of hole 18, let's see if we can get up here. And I think that could be a cool shot. We're about to check out 17. And that should be pointed the right direction for tonight. And hopefully we can get a shot. All right, we're going to try that again. So we're out here at hole 17, which I would say is the second most iconic hole. Well, would you agree, Martin?
Yeah, absolutely. I've come pretty close to hitting some hole-in-ones right over there.
So we're about to check out this vantage point up here and see if it could be a shot. Here out at hole 17, and after looking at it, we're still going to choose hole 5 for the shot tonight. It lines up better, even though this is such a great view. So now that we're at the computer, the first thing we're going to need to do is to import all our star images into this free software called Deep Sky Stacker. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to open our picture files. And I saved all of these stars under this raw. And the reason these are saved as .tiffs is, for some reason, the Deep Sky Stacker sometimes doesn't like the Sony RAWs straight out of camera. So the first thing I do is import them into Lightroom and then just save them as TIFFs. Even though we're changing the file type, it still keeps all of the information the same. It doesn't compress anything. So we're going to select all our images and then hit open, and now we can see them down here, which I believe it's 24 images. And the reason we're doing this, or the reason we're using this software, is because when you take long exposure astrophotography pictures, especially with DSLR and mirror, you get a lot of noise. And what this does is when you stack the images on top of each other, you're increasing your signal to noise ratio, which gives you a better, cleaner image. The next part, what we're going to need to do is open up our dark images, which the dark images are, you just put your lens cap on and in the same environment. So when I was out there, so you do the same exact exposure in ISO, and this will expose all of the hot pixels, which when you stack these with your original pictures, you will eliminate any hot pixels that will appear. So the next step is to just check all, and then register your check pictures. This part isn't green just because we're not using flats. So flats are really just used to eliminate sensor dust or dust on your lens, but normally I don't really worry about that. So you hit OK, and we see that we have 24 stacked frames. It's not reading the ISO or exposure because we changed those to those tips. And we have 25 dark frames. And you just hit OK. And depending on how fast your computer is, this could take a while, or it could take no time at all. For the sake of this video, I've already stacked all the images, so we're not going to wait this because it would probably take about 45 minutes. So the next thing we're going to want to do is open this autosave.tiff into Photoshop. So you can see in the foreground that the foreground's all blurry. That's just because of the Skywatcher Pro mount that the camera sits on. It keeps in line with the stars, but the foreground moves. And don't worry about that. We'll fix that later. So you can see the picture, might not look good at the moment, but there's some tricks in Photoshop that you can use to really bring out those stars. So the first step you're going to want to do is come up to Image, Mode, and then set your image to a 16-bit per channel. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. There's like exposure and gamma, which is what I normally choose. It defaults to this local adaptation, which does some editing for you, but I normally just like to do the exposure and gamma. The first thing you're going to want to do is to neutralize your background. So like the space part in it where there's no stars. As you can see, it's very bright in here, and we just want to make that more of a natural black color. So normally what I do is I just set a threshold layer, adjust this kind of how you want it, and really we're just trying to pick a dark spot in this image because that's where none of the light parts of the image will be. So you're going to want to go choose your color sampler tool, and then we'll just zoom in and then choose this darker part up here because we know this part will be where we want it to be black. So with this, you can see, let's turn that threshold off. With this, you can see you get a red, green, and blue value. So for the next step, you're going to want to choose a levels. So in our levels, in the properties, we can see the histogram right here. This right here is all of our star data. So what we're going to want to do is change to our each individual channel, so our red channel, and we're going to take this value and replace it with the 97. And then let me zoom back out. So don't worry about what the color looks like. Just worry about after you do all three of the channels. So 101, and then blue is going to be 108. So now you can see that we have more of a natural sky look. And you can even see that if we turn the levels on and off, you can see this is our Milky Way core, the part we're trying to bring out. And you can see all of that data, even though we're getting rid of all of this data on the left, we're keeping all of that data with the stars. And so this is a good starting point. Normally what I do from here is I create a new layer with Shift Control Alt E. I normally do this after I make almost every adjustment just to make sure if I do something down the road, I can always just delete those layers and have a backup. So the next step, we're going to want to make a new adjustment layer. We're going to make a curves layer. And we can see in our curves, here is our histogram. You can see that this is where all our data is. And we're going to want to do an aggressive curve on the top right. So as you see that, you can see that we're starting to pull out that detail in the Milky Way. But it's also making everything else brighter. That looks pretty good. And from here you can do another levels adjustment, which I think we're gonna do. So if we make a new adjustment layer, levels, and we look at our channels, you can see that's more spread out now. So that part that we marked up there, that's still a good color balance, but with all of the clouds and the light pollution down here, let's see if we can, let's make another threshold layer, move this down here, and okay. So from this, now let's go to our levels and back to properties, go to red, and let's change this. So we're not going, so normally when I do my second one, I just kind of, I don't go directly to these red, green, and blue values. Normally I'll just do like a little bit less. So let's try 30. Since they're all pretty close, we'll just do all 30 and then blue 30. So if we take a look there, so if we turn it on and we turn it off, you can see that, so you can see from here that we are starting to get some better detail in the Milky Way, which with the little adjustment we've already done, we have some very good detail. So let's just go ahead and delete that threshold layer and Control Alt Shift E and make a new layer. So from here you can play around with, you can do another curves layer if you want. You can keep doing this over and over, really. So the more you do it, the more noise you're going to introduce into the picture. So it's kind of just like you just kind of like, just want to kind of play around with it. So let's just do a slight curve, and then from here let's do a brightness and contrast. So from here let's just bump that contrast up and tone down the brightness just a tad, and we're starting to get some really good detail in the Milky Way. So we'll just go ahead and save that. If you want to play around with the colors a little bit, you can mess around with the like vibrance and saturation. So if we do this, if you do bump it too much, even just because of all this light pollution and the yellow light down here, it'll start kind of giving you some crazy colors. But let's try do a little vibrance there. And then you can even add a like hue and saturation. And we can go in here to our yellows and we can tone down the saturation to try to give us more of a natural sky look. So about right there. We don't want to just shoot it down there to just have white light, because then we do get rid of some of the yellows in the Milky Way. So we'll just do about right there on the saturation. And then lightness about right there. So let's make a new layer. And I think we're done editing. So with that, that's a quick little tutorial of editing stars in Photoshop. There's a lot more tricks and tips that you can do to this. But just to keep this video short, these are just a few tricks you can do to bring out your sky. For this picture, I ended up doing a 5-minute exposure at ISO 200. And with that long exposure, we were able to grab some really good detail in here. It looks a little dark. We can fix that right here. So I just did a brightness and contrast layer where I increased the brightness a tad and then decreased the contrast. So then I did a curves adjustment layer where I just brought up the shadows. And from this point, I think we have it looking pretty good from here, we're just going to replace the sky with the stars. In Photoshop, there's a lot of different ways you can do sky replacements. The way I ended up doing it is I went to select, color range, and what this does, it makes a selection off of a color that you pick in the image. So if let's change this to none. So if we pick this, say this green layer down here, let's go back to black. You can see black matte, you can see it selected all of the green. So what we're gonna wanna do is select the sky up here. And then, because really all we're trying to mask out is this hill in the background and the tree. You can select this color selector and then the plus to add different colors to it. That might be a little too much. You can see it is selecting some down here, but we can just go manually later and edit those out or mask those out. So the next thing, I like how we have this selection right here. We can change this fuzziness where you can see how much it's selecting. So we want to do probably about right here, because if we do too much, we start losing detail in the hills and in the tree. So about right there is pretty good. And then just hit OK. So let's move this. So that it selects this area, but what we're gonna wanna do is go to select inverse and then come down here and hit the mask button. And let's turn off these layers. So now you can see that it did select just the sky. We're going to need to fix a few issues. So if we go here, we're going to create a solid layer. Let's use solid black and then bring that behind. You can see where we're going to need to clean up our mask. So from here, you select the mask, go over here and select the paintbrush, and then change this to black, because black will hide stuff in the image, and then just paint on there. Let's turn our flow to 100. So we'll just paint on this and we'll just get rid of all of this other stuff. And then we'll turn back to white because it got rid of some of the stuff down here. And then up in here, let's actually change the hardness. And you can spend as much time as you want trying to get this mask perfect. For this application, we're just going to get it close. Or we could be here for about an hour trying to just make this area look good. So we'll just do this, see if we miss anything else. And we can now get rid of that color fill. And we can bring in our Milky Way image. You can see we have the image behind, and there is a little fuzziness around the tree that we can get rid of. But first, let's just do this, like that's okay. We'll select our foreground. We have a lot of this grass in here that we really don't want. So we'll just do Control T, and we can move this down to about right there. So we still keep all of the green, or all of the T-box, and then show this, and then we can bring more of our stars out. And then, so we'll select OK, and then select the Milky Way, do Control T, so you can move that around. And you can see we really want to, just to keep this in easy mode, we're going to just hide all of those dark spots in there, which we have it pretty good where it already was. And then that gives us good detail here. And then from here, an easy way I found how to get rid of this haloing effect around the tree, select your foreground and apply the multiply blending mode. Now we don't have the fringe ground trees, but we do have these hard dark shadows. And what we can do there is we select our Milky Way image, we can select a mask, and then we can just paint all of this out. So if we turn off our foreground, you can see that now we're just basically just getting rid of all of this area. So how it did the multiply, it does kind of look good with the tree making this dark, but how you can get rid of all these kind of harsh, these big jumps from the dark to light, you can go back, we'll select white, and then we'll turn our flow down to about 3 and change our hardness to 0. And now you can just kind of paint, go back and forth, just hold left click, and then you can get rid of those harsh changes and kind of blend them in a lot better. So if we just blend this in, so let's change this to black. So now we're blended in this way, and I'm just holding left click and basically just painting it in there. And you can see over here that we do have some of the stars have gone over to this. You can get rid of that. There's a lot of, we could spend, you know, an hour, 2 hours making this picture look perfect, but for this example, we're just going to kind of leave it like that. But you can see how now the blending looks a little bit more natural. Let's go back to white and let's darken this up. Try to make it look a little bit more even over here. And then really from there, there's this dark spot. Let's try to get rid of that a little bit. And then from there, we're basically done with the image. What we can do to edit it a little bit farther, we can select both layers, Control Shift Alt E to make a new layer. And then we can just mess around with some curves and adjustment layers. We can bring up some shadows here, make it a little bit more contrasty, bring down this a little bit too much. About right there is good. And then let's add a brightness and contrast layer. We'll tone down the brightness a little bit because the sky's a little bright. And then make it a little bit less contrasty. Right there. And there we pretty much have a finished image. We took a 5-minute exposure of the foreground, blended it in with 25 stacked images of the stars, and created a very cool looking image. One fact right here, this brightest star, that's Jupiter, and this next brightest star, that's Saturn. So they photobombed us. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. The picture came out amazing, better than I was expecting it to be. Be sure to go check out Martin Pursell's video. I'll have the link to his YouTube channel in the description below. His video, it was more of a vlog style, showing basically every step on how we determine the shots. And get out there, learn, build, and have fun.